we get a fact check on Bartolome de las Casas?
Guys, I promise you, it's been like 500 years. The dude is definitely a saint.
We did our fact check. Our team was on it. They were typing away furiously, and the fact check came back that he is a servant of God.
What?
But he's contrary to, I would say, popular opinion. Contrary to Rafa's opinion, he's not a saint. He's on his way. He's on his way to sainthood. So pray for his intercession. Maybe he can get a miracle, Rafa, and then you'll be good to go.
Maybe I can, but Pope Francis, come on, man. What are we doing?
Yeah. Papa Francisco, when you're listening to this podcast, just know one thing that Rafa wants.
One thing. Yeah.
There's if you guys remember the last episode, we talked about the Desert Fathers, but do you guys know the Stylites?
I've never heard of them.
They're around the same time as the Desert Fathers, but they didn't go out to the desert. They went onto pillars.
And
they went onto pillars.
And then what would they do on the pillars?
They would stay up there for a very long time. They would stay up on the pillars. Real? Yeah, they're called Stylites. And so get a fact check on that.
We got another fact check.
Get a fact check on the Stylites.
Okay.
And so they didn't want to go out to the desert for whatever reason. You know, it's a long trek. But there's pillars that they would go up on, and they would stay up there for years on top of pillars. And people would bring them food, and all they would do was pray for people. They would preach from the pillars. You know, you'd get like big crowds around the pillars.
On their soapboxes?
Yeah, basically. Wow. And they would just stay up there for years, and they would refuse to come down. So there's some really good stories about the Stylites. There's some really funny ones too. I just don't remember them. Rafa, you pulled them up.
Fact check?
Yeah, fact check on the Stylites.
Fact check on the Stylites is first known Stylite was Simeon Stylite the Elder.
What was that?
First known Stylite, fact checking this, was Simeon Stylite the Elder.
That's crazy.
Last name Stylite. That is crazy.
Yeah. That's probably why they're called Stylites.
I think speaking of Desert Fathers and church wisdom, one of the saints I have recently kind of been diving into is St. John Bosco, right? Who perhaps maybe starting to draw some connections with the Running with Bosco podcast. But St. John Bosco, a lot of surprised faces you can't see over this audio format, but everyone looks
Jaws
shocked.
Dropped.
Thank you. Some audio description there. But St. John Bosco, of course, being most known for serving young people in Turin, right? And there were even like these, basically at the time, Italy had industrialized. So there's factories, picture like depressed people, small amounts of food, and a lot of smoke and smog in the air.
That sounds bad.
And there were teens going into the city to get jobs, young people, 12, let's say. And they were basically like ravaged sharks and animals and lions.
Wait, what?
And they were forming into these gangs of teens. And John Bosco, right, saw the holiness that they were called for, and he kind of was able to bring them in, and he really turned their lives around.
Yeah. At one point, he got in trouble with the authorities of Italy. Like, they were worried that he was forming an army. Yes,
they were like Dumbledore's army from Harry Potter, except John Bosco edition. They were worried that he was going to start an army.
Hundreds of boys.
Yeah, and I remember at the time, the Italian government had just forgotten about these boys. They had doomed these boys to live a life of basically violence and gangs. They said these children they're not capable of anything. But John Bosco had the complete opposite approach. He thought everyone is capable of holiness. And when he was a young person, around 9, he had a vision that kind of launched the trajectory of his life, where basically in the vision, he saw this pack of young boys and animals wrestling, fighting, cursing. There's a couple visions that he had over the span of a few years. And the Virgin Mother came to him in this vision, and all of a sudden these animals turned into sheep, went into lambs, right? Which is obviously important symbolism in the Christian faith. And Mary said that you have the ability, John, to help bring these people to the faith, to tame these wild animals, to bring these young people to God and turn them into sheep at the foot of Jesus, at the foot of our shepherd.
Yeah, so I don't know, that's super inspiring because, I don't know, it's tough when there's, when your peers around are, just not like sort of bought in. They're not super interested. And you sort of have like this sort of maybe idea, temptation, like, I'm just not going to deal with them. I'm not going to talk to them about my faith or anything like that. But Don Bosco at 9, I think you were saying, was called that all of these people who are far away from Christ are called to be sheep, and Jesus Christ is the shepherd. But I think we're all called to it in different ways. Like, how do we actually reach out to these people? People have different talents. So I think this Don Bosco had his particular style of doing that.
He did. There's all kinds of really, really great stories about John Bosco's really creative approach to bringing his peers to the faith. As a kid, he learned to juggle and like slackline and all these sort of almost like party tricks. And he would make bets. Actually, a lot of his stories involve him making bets with young people. He would basically say, I bet I can juggle these 4 chainsaws or whatever you juggled back then, logs, whatever. And if I can do it, you have to come to mass with me. You have to come to mass with me tomorrow and then go to CCD. And then when he became older and as an adult, this is one of my favorite stories. There's a rumor out there that this man never lost a race until well into his 50s. And he's with like young people in some of their athletic primes, and he never lost a race to the hundreds of boys that he worked with. So much, his speed was so legendary that he would actually go to the most dangerous streets. He would grab a handful of money that young people, these gangs of teens were gambling with, and he would just run, like steal their money until he got to church, and then he would laugh and they would stay for mass. He had this air to him. And these young people, they would get to this church and they would see their peers were like listening and respecting to this man. And the example that the peers set, their courage in being faithful was inspiring to those who maybe were struggling or still learning a little bit, maybe earlier on in their faith journey, like some of these teens.
Yeah. So I was reading about sort of like his later life after he grew up. He gave him a priest. And by the way, disclaimer, his name is John Bosco, but in Italy, Don means father. So he's also Don Bosco. So he's Don John Bosco, Don Bosco, same person.
Right.
And
not at all confusing.
Don John Bosco. Also, I think he blows my mind because he was also like super brilliant. He like mastered Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, and was like a master of Italian history. This guy was crazy. So like, I think what's crazy is like God gives like certain people so much grace. Like we're all called to holiness, and he raises up among the people like these crazy examples of just like both supernatural and natural virtue. And I think, that's awesome. And I think that's like a grace that you can pray for. Like, Lord, I want to be awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and ultimately it's to God's glory, but God's glory can shine through like people like John Bosco, who just everyone loved him and he was brilliant and awesome and super fast, apparently.
Right. He used these like everyday skills that all of you guys have to bring people to the Lord. And the Lord elevated those skills even more. These skills that the God had given these people, right? That given John Bosco, he elevated them. The Lord elevated them for his own glory, like you said, Grant. I think we're really lucky as Catholics to have this almost infinite source of information and of inspiration and this wealth of faithful knowledge in the saints. One of the great things that young people can do to continue to learn about the faith is to learn about the saints, right? John Bosco is a great example. Blessed Carl, like we talked about, even servants of God's, contrary to what some people might think about their saintly status, right? These are all really, really great examples, and there's almost innumerable saints that we can learn about as Catholics, and we have this continually growing, right? Just look at Blessed Carlo Acutis, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know about, a 15-year-old who's about to become a saint, who died in 2006, very, very modern. We have all this knowledge we can continue to go back to and continue to learn from and grow from.
Yeah. Saint Moses the Ethiopian, straight up pirate. Literally died fighting people, defending a monastery from pirates. Yeah.
Speaking of the Lord using your skills, he was a skilled pirate. The Lord used his skilled pirating.
Right.
Perhaps the Lord adapted his skilled pirating.
There we go.
Well, gentlemen, another wonderful opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of insight into the name of this podcast, Running with Bosco, right? And maybe as we go deeper and deeper into this, we can explain some of the imagery in a later episode. But as always, it's a blessing to be here with you, gentlemen. And please know that we're praying for you guys at home, and please pray for us.
Yeah. Thanks, Reed. Thanks, Rafa. Catch you later. And speaking of imagery, that AI art of John Bosco, is that what we're diving deeper into?
I was gonna do the logo, probably
The
the
imagery.
logo of the dog, not John Bosco with 8 fingers.
Right.